Hey folks, it's Tom, your Frugal prepper. So, driving to work the other day and the temp gauge stopped working on the Hyundai. So I pulled my little trusty trunk Actron out and looked real quick at the live data. I bought this like used from somebody for $40, um, and goes through 2010. It's a great little tool to keep in the trunk. And read the live data, and I could see that the computer was seeing the temperature just fine, but yet my temp gauge wasn't working. So I decided to troubleshoot that the next weekend, which is last weekend. And so I can't actually show you the symptom as it was because I already replaced the part and fixed it. But it's interesting that this car has one temp sensor, and this one sensor has two functions built into it. One for the computer and a separate circuit and function for the gauges. So I'll take you through the wiring diagram and show you how the gauge works, and then we'll show you how I test it. You're going to need your trusty test light, something to back probe with. I don't have a big fancy AS wave kit like Erico or some of the other guys do. I got an assortment of T-pins. These work great as a cheap way to back probe and even front probe things if you're careful and don't shove an oversized one into the socket. So I'll take you out and show you what's going on with the car. Okay, so what I use to get my wiring diagrams is this BBB Industries site. I'll give a shout out to Ivan at Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. Is the person that first clued me into this website. But this is helpful. They have wiring diagrams for like every vehicle. So you go here, you go to the bbbindustries.com, you click on technical information, you can click on TSBs and wiring diagrams, and you just have to put a name in here. And put none for company, that's what I do. And then put an email address. You don't have to use your real one. And then you put in, I put DIY mechanic. Say submit. And then you can say I agree to this stuff. And then you can click on wiring diagrams. And you come down here and select the year. So it's 2004. Hyundai. Elandtra. 2.0 engine. And so the instrument cluster will be under body and accessories. And then you'll see instrumentation. You'll search. There's two diagrams here. The instrument cluster comes with or without a trip meter, but the temp gauge works the same on both. So I'm gonna, you can come down here and look at it here, but you can also click this button and download your wiring diagrams. And so the other diagram that I had to look at was for the sensor itself, and that'll actually be under engine, and then it'll be under cooling fans. It will be that one, and again you can just download it. So once I download it, I have it in my Adobe. I have both diagrams, so we'll head over here and take a look at this first. So we come down through here, we can see here are our different lights on the instrument cluster, more lights, turn signals, high beam, low beam, keep going down, more lights. Here's our indicator for our gear that our transmission's in, and here's our gauges. And then these gauges all hook to this MyCom. And so from a little searching around on Google, I found out this MyCom is like a little mini computer that lives in the instrument cluster, or it's a controller circuitry that lives in the instrument cluster. And you see here's your electronic coolant temperature gauge. And we come down here and we look and we say we see that goes to the MyCom, and then off of the MyCom, it has some inputs, like you have your fuel level thing, you have your I don't know, a chime bell. Here, this one is actually a connection to the PCM, but here is the one that I was looking at, and I see that this goes to an ECT sensor and sender. But then you see in the circuit, it only shows pin number 2 and a ground down here, and it says sender. So that makes me think maybe those other 2 wires are for something else, like another sensor that tells the computer the temperature. So there might be 2 built into this one unit. So now I'll pull up that cooling fan diagram. We see all the relays and stuff, the fan motors. But right here, we see we have a sender and a sensor. We have a thermistor here. We have this pin coming to a ground. On the other side, it's pin number 2. It's 0.5 millimeter wire, and it's green. This one is for the computer to read the circuit. We can see that this is the PCM down here, right? And then there's a sensor ground and an ECT input. And we have a green-black wire on pin 1, and we have a black wire on 3. So this will be green with a black tracer, this will be black, and then this is our green wire, pin 2. And that's the one that we're interested in doing the testing with, to see if maybe that circuit is dead and this circuit here for the computer is still working. Okay, so your temp sensor is clear back here. You've got to unplug this little connector right here, and at first it looks like there's no way to really get in there to back probe it, but it's actually got this little plastic cover. You just catch that with your fingernail and undo those 2 little clips, and this little plastic cover comes off. So we see here, there's our green wire with a black stripe, a green wire, and a black wire. And we know from that wiring diagram we want to go after our green wire. So we go ahead and take our test light here, and I'm going to clip one end of this onto the battery negative, and then I'm just going to touch it to my positive and make sure it lights, and you can see there that it lights. Okay, and so that's ready to go. I'm going to grab my test pen assortment and just grab me kind of a medium size pin here, T-pin, and I'm just going to take and back probe that in to where this green wire is. Get down in there with that connection, and then what I'll do is touch my test light to this. I'll zoom out a little here for you. When I touch my test light to this, I should see my temperature gauge start to move, and you may even see the light light up a little bit, but I gotta go turn the ignition on first. So let me go do that. Okay, so now our ignition's on. I'm gonna make sure that looks like it's making good contact. I might want to stick it down the other side. We'll touch this. And I don't know if that shows up on camera, but that test light lights up just the least little bit there. And so what will happen is this will move the temp gauge. So I'm just gonna kind of leave that in place there, and let's go look at the temp gauge. Okay, so now you can see the temp gauge is like right in the middle. Now I'm going to go unhook that test light and hook it back up a couple times. Okay, so that's unhooked now. I'm going to hook it back up. I'm going to unhook it. Hook it back up. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit of an idea how you can check this. And so now I know that everything from this wire back is good. Now the other thing that I would be concerned about here is that works off of the ground. This particular circuit is sending voltage out, and by how much it goes to ground is what the temp gauge reads. So what I'm going to do is just check for a good ground and with my test light. And the best way to do that I know of is to go ahead and hook this up to the positive side of the battery. Hook this probe up to the positive. And then I'll touch it to the negative, make sure it lights. Or you can touch it to any known good ground and it lights up. And now what we want to do is go down to the casing of this sensor, you know, the actual brass part of the sensor, and make sure that that is grounded. And we can see that it has a good ground. So we know the sensor has a good ground that way. And then we know from that point that it's pretty much got to be the sensor at that point. The wiring's good, it's got a good ground. So I went ahead and got a sensor from junkyard, popped it in there, and the gauge works again. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and pop my little wiring cover back on this guy. You see it's kind of got a cutout part in it here. That's where the little clip goes that you push on to disconnect it. So you just have to kind of put it back over the right way. And you know, this cover probably helps keep dirt and stuff out a little, but it also provides strain relief, so you really want to put this back on. And then you just plug that back into your sensor and you're good to go. Now when I first put this in here, I didn't get it in quite tight enough and it was leaking a little coolant. So I just got done taking it out, cleaning it off, putting it back in tighter. It takes a 19mm socket. I had to use a 1/2-inch drive because it had enough room in it to get over the connector part. You know, that's just what it is. But I put it back in there, I cleaned it, put it back in tighter, and we'll hope it doesn't leak now. But that's all there is to it, and now I'll just put the little engine cover back on and I'm good to go. Alright folks, so that's the video. I say even if you don't have a scan tool, if you're not getting a check engine light, you're probably getting a temperature reading to the computer. You go ahead and troubleshoot that temp sensor circuit. This T-pin idea, I've seen a lot of people use it, but I didn't really even pay attention to what they were until one of Flat Rate Master's videos. The Flat Rate Master, he was going over some of the stuff he used, and he showed that he uses T-pins a lot. These work really well. Now if you're going to probe multiple wires, you got to be careful because they got that T on the end. You don't want to short stuff out. So what I do is just throw like a piece of cardboard or something, a little piece of cardboard in between them so they can't touch. I've thought about just trimming the T off of a couple of these and soldering on a piece of wire with some heat shrink. Might make a neat little probe too, to get some probes with some little extensions on them. If you can afford one of those nice probe kits from AES Wave, that'd be awesome. But you know, I try to work on my own cars to save money, so I can't spend more in tools than I would spend on having somebody fix it for me. It doesn't become frugal anymore. You know, learning a little bit about diagnosis, maybe how to read some diagrams, and being able to test things will definitely save you a lot of money. A lot of times the reason we're trying to fix our own cars is to save money, because you know, shops are expensive, and good shops are even more expensive, and the good shops are the ones that you got to wait sometimes weeks to get into, and you need your car to get to work. So it's going to definitely save you a lot of money and time being able to diagnose a simple problem like this, although this wouldn't necessarily stop you from driving the car, you know, but you don't want to overheat it and not know it, or it could get real expensive for not fixing that one little problem. Anyway, hope this helps. It's Tom, your Frugal Prepper. I'll talk to y'all later.